Angela Duckworth says enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare. Welcome back, listeners, to the BizBlend Podcast. I'm your host, Sana, and today, for this episode, we are talking about resilience. Not the inspirational or motivational poster version, the version that shows up in your calendar, your cash flow, your supply chain, and your nervous system as well. Because when you are building a mission driven startup while managing serious health challenges, resilience stops being a personality trait, it becomes an operating system. And listeners, let me tell you, my guest today, born in 1958 at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, his earlier days were shaped by contaminated water exposure. Over time, he faced nerve issues, then Parkinson's, and later Alzheimer's markers. Spent years as a database programmer, that blank screen to working system mindset later carried into a very literal startup journey. He found research spotted a gap in how a plant seed was prepared, built an ultra chill milling approach to preserve compounds, and created a powder format designed for people who struggle swallowing pills. And along the way, he's pushed for tracking, blood work, and measurable progress. Also, he's still navigating the Camp Lejeune litigation because systems actually matter. Well, today we are going to unpack listeners' resilience as a strategy, discipline, adaptability, long term thinking, and yes, a couple comfortable angles too. Because this is BizBlend. We do the blend, not the fluff. So, listeners, meet my incredible guest, Mark Burnett. Mark, welcome to the show, and as always, it is an honor to have you here.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going over some of my two businesses, one in programming and also how I did that and overcame numerous things that got in the way, and also where I'm at now at 67. Back in business, I'm supposed to be retired, but that doesn't stop you when you're an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. That's perfect. Perfect. Very well said, Mark. And to begin with, first of all, let's talk about the word resilience. Now, when people hear it, I mean, they think motivation, but you have had to treat it like infrastructure. So, what are the non-negotiable routines or decision rules you use to keep the business moving when your body or brain is not cooperating?
Sure. Well, I think for me, for working on the My Brain Restore, which is at mybrainrestore.com, working on that website, I spent 6 months studying the product I wanted to use and doing the research, if that product would work, and studying a Japanese research out there and applying that research to taking the product myself first. I mean, one of the steps you have to be as an entrepreneur is you have to rethink, will what I'm doing make sense? Not just me, buy it or use it or help people. You have to look at it from a standpoint, what does it do for me? And in that regard, the first thing I did for the first 6 months is test this product on myself, refined it, found other ways to make it properly. So all those things were important before launch, before being able to bring it out to people. And it was strange because I ran in the Michael J. Fox marathon. And when I did that, which I couldn't do before, other people were already coming by me and say, "What are you taking? How did you do that?" So part of it was for entrepreneurs out there, attending events that make you shine, be able to go out there and do that. That's important for whatever product you're bringing out, whatever business you have. Try to prove your place in the marketplace. I proved it by running a marathon and having State Street Parkinson's, which was awe-inspiring to people around me when they were my first customers right there. So those are important things. I think when you're in business and you're looking to start a business, you have to define your audience. who your people are going to be, how to expand upon that, so that you can make your product get out there better. You have to look at your different avenues. Can I get on Amazon? Can I get on Walmart? How does that
Yeah,
affect my inventory? All those kind of things are important.
absolutely. No doubt. No doubt. And I think this is such an important lesson. It's not only in entrepreneurship, but it's the basic here because there's no other better way to kind of prove the value of the product by using it yourself and then exhibiting the benefits, what the product or the service will serve. So I think that's the strategy. It's on point, Mark.
Right. And I should point out that before this, before I turned 67 and did all this, I was in the computer industry. I was a early programmer, developer in the industry. And back then, it was very difficult to find programmers. If you did, they typically were people from college that had studied computer engineering or something like that. Not only were they high priced, they really had only learned from school. So the problem I had learned on my own how to program, and I started to look for people that fit into that pattern. And I eventually hired a group of very, very talented programmers, and we worked on some of the largest projects probably in the world that people around the world use for big companies. And I did this I learned one important thing. If you go to apply for a job, they want to know your credentials. They want to know what school you went to, right? But when you're in business, they don't ask that question. They only ask, what can you do? And they don't ask for your teams, oh, can you give all the resumes everyone has or whatever? They don't ask for that question. So I hunted people and put ads in paper like, look, if you don't have college education, but you know how to program, come see me. And they get it. And they came out of their basements and they came see me. Came to see me and they could code. They were amazingly good programmers, but they didn't have the credentials. I said, I'd hire you. No problem. I'll give you a start. Number one, from an entrepreneur standpoint, I got low cost developers that wanted to learn with other programmers. So bringing those teams together became something that I could do. But then as a business, I would say that we were programming company, and once we got a few programming jobs done, and we cut our price way low to get those jobs, but once we had a few companies we could put on our list, like, wow, these are pretty big companies that hired you, that's all we needed. Once we had that, that was a key element to moving forward. So when you're in business, you know, don't try to make all your money off the first thing you go after. Try to build your people that you're working with. Um, your customers, but also look at your talent level. They have to be sharp. You have to find the right people you can bring to a meeting. Um, and I made mistakes. I'll tell you the first mistake I made, and everybody has to be careful with these kind of things. I brought my programmers with me because I knew they were talented, they would impress the people. But I also had a program problem with the programmers saying I can fix something in 5 minutes, and I would like kick them. I'd like shut up. Well, yeah, first of all, I know you're not gonna fix it in 5 minutes, and we charge by the hour. Yeah. So, that doesn't cover your paycheck. It doesn't cover the coffee. So part of it was teaching my programmers, to be quiet. Let me run the sale. You say, yes, that can be done. Let me deal with the timing of it. Let me find out what the customer's willing to pay. Because we were in a unique environment where there wasn't a set price. It was what the customer assumed was what it was going to cost them. And surprisingly, that number could be quite large, much larger than we have even anticipated. So I had a habit of saying, once they felt comfortable with us, what's your budget? I didn't know price. I just said, what's your budget? I want to make sure you don't go over your budget. And sometimes that customer would say, well, you know, I'm thinking in my head $20,000 to do this project. They're thinking in their head 100,000. So they're saying, well, we don't really want to go over 100,000. I said, I think we can keep it around maybe 90. Would that work for you guys? I don't look out of there going, geez, I just made a ton of money on a file that was $20,000 project. So when you're doing that, especially in an environment like programming, the perception is different. So this could work in construction or other elements, or maybe a new product that you have. What, Mr. Customer, what are you looking at? And don't sell yourself short. Look, I've always been told, don't leave money on the table. Okay.
That.
It was great advice, right? But
Yep.
it took me a while, and I went through a couple mistakes, in doing so. The other mistake we made, or I made, um, we took an ad out. Once we got going, we took an ad out in a paper, the Washington Post, huge, enormous paper in the Washington, D.C. area. Uh, Paid like $1,000 every time we put an ad in. We put everything we did. We put all this stuff. Didn't get a call. Nothing at all. I mean, no one called us. No one bothered. We ran it for a couple months. I'm spending money, and I'm like, this isn't working. So I told the Washington Post, I said, guys, I want you to change the ad, make it smaller, and I want you to say expert programmers and our phone number. No company name, and don't even tell anybody what we do. I got the worst feedback ever from the Washington Post saying that will not work. It's a horrible waste of your money. It's stupid, blah, blah. Okay. I put the ad in. The phone started ringing. And what was interesting was I got the most nastiest, orneriest people that you can imagine from big companies and big organizations in Washington, D.C. You literally say, you think you guys are expert programmers? And we said, I would always say, yes. What's your problem? And then they go into this, say, well, we've had multiple people come here. No one's been able to fix it. I said, you haven't had us come there. I'll tell you what, I'll bring my team. We'll come down free. You show us the problem. We'll tell you what we can do. And sometimes I would tell the programmers, just throw them a bone. In other words, if there's something wrong with their database and you can fix it, whisper at me what it is and fix it right on the spot, right there free. Just do it. So they go, oh my gosh, that was incredible. And we always got those people as clients every single time. And it was a challenge. They were mad. They were not happy. But then again, they really did want an expert, but they were frustrated. And we knew we could do it. So sometimes you have to, again, think out of the box. How do I get out there? Even if it makes the customers mad at you, who cares? If they're happy with you in the end, that's all that matters. Right. So, that's some really good advice I can tell people. And every product's different. But if you build something and it's pretty cool and maybe you need to give them, 10 days with it or something, or say, try it out. It gives you feedback, but if they like it and don't want to give it back to you, you got to say it. So once you start doing that, then the word of mouth gets out. You start building customer base. And we'd always post our customer base on our website. We'd always put it up there, and they were big players. And once we got to that point, no one ever asked us questions anymore. That was it. Once we had the International Monetary Fund, America Online, the Pentagon, those were our customers that we put on a list that were enormous. Toyota Motor Company to us and said, we need to build something that's never been built before, but you guys seem pretty hot. And that's all we needed. And then we took advantage of, the trade magazines. We made sure we were in them. We went to the shows. We didn't spend a lot of money, but we'd make sure people wrote articles about us. And that's free publicity. And as long as you can withstand, they might say bad things about you, but we were fortunate we didn't get that. You got to do that. And all those things that we did was more about having a quality product and programming that we did, delivering on time, working with the customers. attack the small problems first so you can show them things and then move forward. That works for every company, I think, out there.
I do agree. I do. I mean, what a story. What a journey in there, now. I mean, it's business 101. And um, it's not even a clickbait marketing, but it's actually expert programmers. And yeah, I mean, uh, what do you think? How would that pan out in today's day and age, Mark? Yes.
Yeah, I think it pans out even now. Now, of course, we have AI involved in a lot, but we have to understand too, from a business standpoint. In my opinion, I went through the dot-com bubble burst, which was essentially when companies were extremely overvalued, and ours was too, and many others that wanted to buy us at that time. We were offered $34 million for our company. Um, and it was, unfortunately, it was one of the groups that got caught up in a dot-com bubble burst, because what happened was companies were forming that really didn't have a product, but they were valuations were like $2 billion on the stock market. Uh, and they were running around trying to buy companies because they didn't have products. And this was, I think we're seeing a parallel in the AI market where,
Okay.
yeah, where companies are sprouting up all over, huge amount of money's being poured into them, but in the end that only a few are gonna do it right and survive, and that other AI companies are going to get thrown by the side. I've looked at some that do a lot of advertising on TV, use their product and going, "Wow, this is terrible." I don't know how you don't have a product. You have so much investment enthusiasm, it misses the point. you know, does the product actually work, or do these people have something that really functions? So we're seeing all these data centers and everything else be built. We're seeing energy bills go up. We're seeing everyone get involved. Well, what we can recognize from that is that there's going to be a huge fallout. So the question becomes, how do you align yourself with that fallout? How do you protect yourself? I got caught up in the market that we were in because we took our focus off of doing programming and spent a huge amount of time, you know, literally writing paperwork to go public or to get bought by a public company. That took a year off of our time coding, just working with accounting people and everyone else to get to that point where we could do a presentation on that level, and then to find the market fall apart. I think that's going to be duplicated in AI. Now, I say that, but I do believe that one thing that Mark Cuban, I believe, said, is Shark Tank multi-billionaire, owns the Mavericks. What he said was that the next guy who makes $1 trillion will be in his basement using AI. And he's not wrong, in the respect that if you think about it, if you could make a series, we have to look that everything evolves. Okay. So just as like when I was in the computer industry, we were told that paper was gone away. Once PDFs came out, no one would use paper anymore. Printers would go out of business. There was this huge thing that printers were just done, whatever. The exact opposite happened. Printer sales went through the roof. Everyone who got a PDF wanted to print it. Okay. And it seemed logical that at the time the paper would go away, but it just simply didn't. It increased paper sales. It increased printer sales. Um, for a strange reason. It's something maybe not predictable. So although I sympathize with actors and things like that, that their job might be severely injured by this industry, on the other hand, once somebody, and I think this was where Mark Cuban was pointing to, someone in their basement is going to make a movie series or an entire series, figure out how to use AI to maintain continuity throughout the people that they put together, so that the person that you're watching, you no longer realize is AI anymore, or you don't even care. I love the story. And in a way, that is still creative thinking. It's not that AI is making, you still have to write the script. So there's a huge area for script writers, to write scripts that AI can stay in continuity with and then produce into shows or movies that people find amazingly interesting to watch. And we've always replaced people in industries. It's always happened. There's no doubt that, you know, there were horse and buggies at one time. Replaced by cars. Okay. And, it took a while, for people to adapt that. But once they did, and once gas stations got put in place and all these other elements, the infrastructure, all of a sudden cars became cars. And now, of course, we're looking at electric cars, but we don't have the infrastructure yet. We don't have atomic power plants to run AI and cars at the same time. Um, but people will be smart, and smaller nuclear reactors will probably become a thing that I know Amazon's looking at, and other AI groups are looking at to put in for themselves. They're applying for permits to take care of their own power systems. Um, that'll migrate into other things. Um, so, business is always evolving. What is space technology and things we can make there? Um, I think these will all come down to other people finding other ways to use this. Um, but not everything works. I mean, honestly, 80% of the businesses get started fail, but you have to ask, why did they fail? And I've had businesses that fail. I've started businesses that I thought made sense, but sometimes they're way ahead of their time, way ahead of their time. And so you have to introduce at the right market time, and that's hard to figure out sometimes. But for me, with the My Brain Restore, because I'm working with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and dementia people that don't have an alternative, and in the U.S. at least, we're looking at increases in medical costs that are skyrocketing. Insurance, they're expecting just in the next 30 days for the average person, you can imagine this, to their payments going up by $700 to $2,000 for a family of like four. $2,000 a month. Who can afford that? No. Yeah. It's out of the reach. So people are going to move more towards the products like I have, a supplement that gives people a chance to take care of these problems because they can't afford to pay for the insurance. So for me, it's a boom. But I didn't expect that to happen, but it is happening. So I have to gear my product accordingly.
Absolutely, absolutely. Um, and Mark, and then the interest of time, before we wrap up,
Yeah.
um, like you are still in the um, like it's a bit of a different question, but I think it's also a very important part of your journey here. Like you are still in the camp lejeune litigation. You have lived the consequence of a broken system. So, is resilience sometimes code for individuals surviving what institutions should have prevented?
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, Camp Lejeune was a lot of cover up. I mean, obviously, they didn't really want to get that out. There were multiple people who ran Camp Lejeune that came out with, papers and saying, oh, none of this was a problem. But the weird part about it is that the government's own safety security system, I should say safety system, just went out and did the surveys to Camp Lejeune and found the contaminated water, found how it was contaminated. And it's kind of interesting because now in the legal cases going on, the government is trying to say that their own agency that went out and did all the work shouldn't be used as part of the court case.
Wow.
Well, yeah. Like, are you kidding? You're the guys figuring it out. Um, but as of today, this has been going on for 20 years. As of today, not one case have made it to a court yet. So, unfortunately, people are dying from these diseases. Parkinson's is huge. It's hard to hold on. A lot of people are frustrated. Yesterday, I was in a conference call with 900 other people. They're all involved in the litigation. And there are 409,000 in litigation right now with the government. Um, Bloomberg Law believes the payout should be around 21 billion. So, and it is absolutely huge. You can understand why the government doesn't want to pay it.
Oh, oh, I know. Yeah. It's a long battle uphill. However, I mean, this really matters, because resilience is never ever, a way to normalize harm. I mean, sometimes, kind of the assumed resilience of the people is taken as, a way to hide or avoid accountability. And I think the goal is not to become superhuman, but the goal is to build better systems, whether it's in business or healthcare or in policy. Otherwise, we are just applauding survival while ignoring the fire.
Yes. No, I agree. And I think the United States right now, under the current administration, unfortunately, is dismantling a lot of those components that help keep us safe, and I think the United States is going to see a lot of issues there going forward, and its effect worldwide. Um, however, maybe that opens the door for entrepreneurs to fill those gaps. So you got to realize, just because one group fails and stops doing something that was normal, it does mean that other entrepreneurs should be looking at, well, how do I fill that gap? How do I maybe create a nonprofit that could help people in different countries and starving children and people that need these kind of things? These are things, Bill Gates does and things like that. But it doesn't mean that other entrepreneurs couldn't get involved on a grassroots level. So, there's lots of things out there. I mean, every change creates another change. And in business, you always have to think about that. How do I fit into this area? So to the people listening out there trying to start businesses and trying to think of things, think about that, but realize all of us entrepreneurs start 10 businesses and two make it. you know, um, and sometimes you're just way ahead of yourself, and that's what happens, or the competition knocks you out the door. So those are all things you have to consider when you're building business. Expect the unexpected and expect that you might not make it. But if you use that in your head, then it'll help you do a better job.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. And before we close this conversation, if listeners they would like to connect with you, whether it's to explore more around the work that you're doing around Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, and maybe for more wisdom in business and entrepreneurship, what would be the best way to connect?
The best way to connect is to go to mybrainrestore.com. You can read everything about the product and myself, my journey. A matter of fact, we just put up a new book, the 2026 book about myself and my journey. If your group goes up there and to the website and click on the FAQ, underneath it is free PDF. If you click on that, you'll see the 2026 book PDF version. You can download that for free. There's no charge. I give that away. Okay. And that's one thing they can do if they need the product and things like that, or almost everyone knows somebody with those kind of neurological issues. They can use the ebook 10 code, which is in the book, and they can get a 10% discount on an order. And we just started international shipping. So we got our first international shipping as of a couple of days ago. We're trying to figure it all out. So a new venture.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think it's a part of scaling and expansion. So yeah.
Well, we're
But
getting so many people from other countries asking us, and we're like, "Oh, hold on, we're not set up for that yet." I mean, it's a good problem to have, but you got a learning curve.
yeah. Good problem, Prav. I really love that. And yeah, listeners, I'll have all the links in the show notes.
Yeah, and my phone number is there too, by the way. So if they need to call me, my phone it's right there. There's a way they can message me. I mean, everything's there. I'm totally transparent in that way. They can call me up.
Super, super. Yep, listeners, I'll have that as well. So just refer to the show notes along with this episode. And I I I believe, today we talked about resilience as a strategy, listeners, not inspiration or not um like fake bravado or guardrails. But it's guardrails, decision rules, long-term thinking, and knowing when discipline becomes rigidity. And Mark, thank you so much, first of all, for sharing your story, your thinking. I mean, this was really, really amazing. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and I look for those entrepreneurs that are out there that are listening to this to learn something from it, use it, and become successful.
Absolutely. Timeless, timeless golden nuggets out there, listeners. So quickly refer to the show notes. And also, thank you so much for listening. And if you are building while carrying something heavy, I'll leave a reminder here for all of you. You don't need more motivation, you need a better operating system. This is your host, Sana, and I'll catch you on the next episode of BizBlend Podcast. Thank you.